everybody. It's the Man in the Middle show with Kevin and Joe. That is Joe. I am Kevin. How are you, Joe?
Oh man, living the dream one day at a time here, buddy.
You are, brother, getting very close to D-Day. In this case, due day. The baby is probably trying to get out of there at this point. You got a couple of weeks to go.
2.5 weeks to beautiful baby girl coming,
It's
wife
amazing.
healthy, baby healthy. Everything else pales in comparison to being blessed with those two things.
Ain't that the
So,
truth? I'm
yeah,
excited. I'm excited
perspective for
for you.
sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't wait to meet her. Well, we're going to talk about the parental relationship today. And the basis of the show, our sort of our guiding force is the great Dr. James Hollis. The book, The Middle Passage, is really what sparked all this for Joe and I. And one idea that is at the crux of the book is this idea of the first adulthood and the second adulthood. And a very paraphrased view of it is that your first adulthood, think of it as when you enter into life as an adult, um, is based in your childhood, whether you want it to be or not. That is all you've ever known going into your first adulthood. Your relationship with your parents, the things you saw family members doing around you, how they talked about life, how they talked about situations. That is your foundation, and then you go about starting your own life, either consciously or not consciously, trying to live up to the example that was given to you, or change it, change the story, be completely different from what you saw in your parents. And particularly, Joe, as men, our relationship with our fathers and our mothers, totally significant, but in different ways. So we're going to talk about father son today, because you and I both had very interesting relationships with our fathers. And
Both very interesting fathers.
yes, and just to wrap that, and then the second adulthood, which is where we are in the middle here, is when you look up after everything you've accomplished in your first adulthood, your the labels that you've worked hard to gain, the duties that you've accepted and essentially wake up every day putting forth effort into, suddenly feels foreign, doesn't make sense anymore, and you have these questions. And as you know, this show is about not about giving you answers; it's about helping you ask bigger, more important questions. Um, and so, Joe, um, my father is still here. He has late stage Parkinson's, and so he is facing some really tough stuff. He made it through like the first 10 years. The meds really helped him in things. He lives with his wife, who's been an amazing caretaker. And now he's starting to think about how the rest of his life will go. So we've had some, and, my instinct is always, Joe, to bring some levity to any like super serious thing, right? It's just, I always think it's a better way to get through it, not to dismiss it, but to, hey, this is kind of funny if we look at it maybe from this angle. So my dad reached out not long ago, and he was having a really tough day. His wife called me and said he's saying he can't do it anymore. And I said, okay. I said, let me call him. So I called him, and it's tough to hear your dad in that emotional state. Again, we talk about all the time, like men just don't give themselves permission to feel weak or vulnerable. And this was one of those moments for him. And he said, I don't know if I see the point, of living this way. I can't do anything I used to be able to do. I can't turn a screw because I can't see like I need to. I can't go in the garage and do anything and organize things. He was a car guy, Joe. He loved, he was a mechanic when we grew up. He wanted nothing more than to work on cars and drive them around and feel proud in his cars. That was his thing. But he can't do any of that anymore. And he said, I don't see the point. And I said, okay, so what do you, he's like, I don't know. I just, like days like today, I just want to end it all. I go, okay. I go, well, don't make a mess. And he laughed, you know. I said, don't, make Diane clean this up. Like, let's think about how this is going to go down. It, and it was just instantly kind of better because it's like, you know what I mean? When you could get all serious, dad,
Yeah.
but I'm
You
like, dude,
got you got to cut the ice, man. You got to.
yeah, it's like, I get it. I think I would be thinking the same thing. It's like, and so that's where I'm at with my dad currently. Just to that story sums it up. And it's tough because also I want to be there for him, but he almost is like saying, like, just do me, like, don't come over. He said, I look crazy. I get exhausted after an hour of just being social at all, and it's always this tough thing of, do you force it? Because now I'm a grown man, obviously, and he's still my dad. I want to respect his wishes, but I also want to do as much as I can to help him. And so it's a really interesting dynamic. And I know for you, Joe, your father's passed, and obviously that carries it. So my mother passed many years ago when I was 29. She passed. So I'd like to hear how that went down for you and where that sits with you now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities in terms of uh my dad feeling safe enough and trusting me enough to express exactly where he was at. There
Yeah.
wasn't a long list of all these people that he'd met throughout his life knocking on his door now, ready to sit with him in
Mm,
the space where he's, questioning everything about his own mortality or wanting to actually live life. So
yeah.
I felt very blessed to just sit there in a space with my dad like that, and
Mm,
and not judge him for it. Like you were saying, like I didn't judge my dad at all like that. My dad
right.
told me the worst part about getting old is that your mind can still do things that your body can't.
Yeah.
And it's the most frustrate. He said that was the most frustrated he'd ever been in his whole life. And it was so deflating. And him and I talked too about it deflating the ego big time. Like you think you're this, big dick on the block, and then it's like you get old and like,
Yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, it's everyone's gonna face that.
The
No one
ultimate
is
equalizer. Yeah.
right. No one is immune to that. So there's
Right.
also something to be said about that. So I know for anyone that's listening out there, one of the big lessons that I learned about myself, similar to what you're doing, is that I showed up. I carved out the time in my busy ass life and schedule and all that to show up to be a good son for my dad, not for my dad.
Mm,
Okay, let's be very clear. Yes, it was for my dad, but it was second for my dad. It was
mm-hmm.
first for me.
Mm,
Because I didn't want to be a guy that was dealing with grief and sadness and also guilt.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's something to be said about being a good son, and his responsibility as a good father is his and mine is as a son. So
Yeah.
I did that first and foremost, right? And I did all the shit that no one wants to really do anyways. Being in recovery, you're kind of done. I'm used to dealing with shit all the time anyways. I call it miracles in the mud.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like there's just so much to be discovered, and it's funny because like James Hollis has a book called Swamplands of the Soul. So
Yeah.
it's like kind of like that, right? It's like, okay, not everyone has the capacity to go into the depths of all of that nasty shit like that. But it's really big parts of life. So
Yeah.
went in there with my dad. The thing that I'll say about my dad, which I loved, is he said, Joe, I did everything on my bucket list in my entire life except having a hit record.
Mm,
He traveled the world. He played for the president. He played music all over Europe, all over Asia. He had a successful career as a musician for 50 plus years,
Wow.
supporting a family on that. So,
Incredible.
again, in terms of being an artist and using that craft to make a living, that is a success for anyone out
Oh,
there. Like, you
yes.
don't have to be Lady Gaga or Bruce Springsteen to be considered a success in that art. If you can support your life and your family on what you love to do, that's a huge win for life. So
Yeah.
I, although my dad wasn't around, because in his mind, he thought in his mind, I'll never forget this. Because I asked him, I'm like, Dad, why didn't you ever just show up?
Mhm.
Like, he's like, I believed you guys were better off without me being around and without my influence, and I didn't want to fuck you up.
Wow. Damn.
Because he came from an alcoholic mother. Okay.
Mm.
So he had zero nurture,
Hmm. Hmm.
zero. So where you get that, his relationship with his father wasn't ever around.
Right.
Right. So then it's like, okay, well,
So it's
that's
like let me not be around in a better way.
right.
That
Yeah.
was his improvement.
Yeah. 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 So again, and so he was doing the best that he could with what he had,
Yeah.
alcoholic mother, you know, broken home, Vietnam veteran, who knows what. I mean, I know that caused a lot of damage for him. I think everyone but three or four people in his platoon died over
Yeah.
there. It was, so again, there's all these things that compounded all of these experiences. But, again, towards the end, it was like he felt like um, d- he had written the story that he was supposed to write, and he was just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore. So,
Mm.
he had a couple of back surgeries. They didn't go well. The anesthesia caused him to have a couple of strokes. Then he just was unwilling to do the work to relearn how to walk again. So he
Yeah.
was in
How
a
old is he at this point?
wheelchair. He was 71, 72 around this time.
Yeah. Now, similar, I think my dad's going through. He can't do what he's always done. Can't
Yep.
stand up and play.
Nope.
And you just must go when you've had a vision that you followed and you just ride momentum through life in a lot of ways, especially professionally, right?
Yep. Oh
It's
yeah.
like, where's the money coming from? Where's the work calling me? However ambitious,
Identity.
it's identity.
It's
Yeah.
identity, bro.
Hmm.
The turning point for my dad was when he couldn't sing.
Hmm.
He lost his voice. It was game over, dude. Game over. He's like, I don't. What's the point of being here?
Wow. Man, that's something to know what you do and be able to do it for 50 years and still bring it.
Yeah, all self-taught.
Man. And then and that's the bitch of age. It's like it's coming. I'm 54. It's like I know it's fucking coming. But what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna become one of these people who's like, I'm gonna get a oxygen chamber, and I'm a fucking. I want to like stay healthy, but I'm not trying to experiment myself out of growing old. I'd rather live each day and not take for granted that I still have my facilities. And I don't know, but so dude, yeah, and then
Well, the interesting thing too, Kevin, was things very much, and I'll end with this segment. Like, things very much changed in our dynamic towards the
hmm,
end there,
yeah,
because I ended up getting durable power of attorney, and we got all these things set up, and I'm blessed. I have three other brothers who were all super tight. We were all, tight in like the five of us,
yeah,
and so it wasn't like I was on my own, managing all this stuff. Everyone was doing what they could. some of us lived locally and others didn't, so it was like, we did what we could, and my brothers did a fantastic job showing up as well. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
So there's a huge advantage there. I know that doesn't often happen with everyone's
Yeah.
family,
That's the truth.
but the
Yeah.
but the thing is that he just my dad just stopped giving a fuck, bro. I'd come over to, he has COPD, he's doing the oxygen, he's in a wheelchair. I come over there and he opens the door and he's smoking a cigarette and he's eating Snickers. And I'm like, Dad, what the fuck are you doing, bro? He's like, whatever, man. I'm doing whatever I want right now. Like the writing's on the wall. I'm like, all right, man. Like,
Yeah.
do you remember how stupid you used to look at me when you'd say, you know what, Joe? They're 10% of the population shouldn't drink. And that's a lot of people. And you're one of them.
Hmm.
Maybe you're just me, that's you. And I'd say, well, this time, Dad, I'm just going to drink beer. And you'd tell me how stupid I am. I'm like, this is how stupid you are right now, bro. So it's funny how the caretaking
Yes.
kind of advisory roles switched because of him moving into that age of elderly living where it's back to almost childlike,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. And it's like unnatural for both parties, but I'm sure more so for the parent.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, you're talking someone's whole life, they're reliant upon you, and then it's reversed.
Right.
And I mean, I talked to a lot of friends that have dealt with that, where their parents would not accept it.
Right. Yeah. I've heard that many times.
I'm happy that my dad was
Is
sometimes he would battle with me, but I'd just tell him to shut the fuck up. You're being a little bitch, bro. It's okay, you know.
yeah. And it's the whole thing too, is like, man, I think we keep people alive so fucking long these days. Really. Right. I mean, it's like you walk through a hospital and you look in these rooms and somebody's like a fucking skin skeleton. And you're just like, what are we doing to this person? Let them fucking go. What are they going to get back to life when they leave
Yeah.
here?
Oh yeah.
And but that's just the medical system here in America. And I heard this interesting stat, Joe. Um, Fentanyl deaths, the opioid epidemic, overall the numbers are going down, but they have, I want to say, tripled among people 65 and older, opioid deaths. And it occurs to me, maybe all those are not mistakes. I think a lot of these may be terminal illness, and they're just counting them as that because we don't have sort of legal euthanasia here, Kevorkian style. It's, you got to be right part of the whole system. And that just struck me when I heard that stat. I don't think, like, maybe it's how they're prescribing, and but the point being, when somebody wants to let go, how do you know to root for them to keep fighting or just fucking let go?
Yeah. I know for with my nana and with my dad, I told them both, like, to them,
Mm-hmm.
that it was okay to let go.
Yeah.
Like giving them permission. I talked with this lady that worked in hospice for 30 years, and she said a lot of times, people that are dying, what she had experienced personally with all of her patients, is that those that are dying are worried most about the people that are still living,
Mm-hmm.
and that they can't let go of not being there for them. And
Yeah.
that one of the things that helps them transition the most is just granting them permission to go ahead and go, and that you're going to be okay without them, and you're going to
Yeah.
make it. So
Yeah.
I applied that in the last two experiences that I've had with people that I'm very close with in my family, and it worked. It wasn't too long. My nana actually passed the next morning, and then my dad passed within 3 days of that.
Wow. When my mom passed, she had an aneurysm, and when
Ah,
I got to the hospital from I was living in Chicago, they said she has a 2% chance of making it through this. So she's on a ventilator. They're keeping her alive. I was there for a good 3 weeks, and we would take shifts to sit at her bedside, and I had like overnight shift, and so I would just sit there and hold her hand and talk to her and read to her and things. And it was the hardest part of it was saying my instinct is to tell her it's okay, ma. If you need to go, it's because 2% chance. But I felt guilty for not being more of a fighter. You meet these people who are blindly just like, I think of some kid from Brooklyn. Come on, ma, you can do this. You're gonna live, ma. Come on, ma. I'm here for you. And I'm like, I kind of want to be that guy right now. It's pure heart. But I'm in my head going, if I'm her and I can hear me, I probably just want to know that everybody's going to be okay. And man, I struggled for a long time after she passed with sort of that guilt of, did she need to hear me fight for her? You know? Um, and so that again, going back to sort of the thing is like, I guess you just have to all any of us have of our is our instincts of what feels right. What does this person need? Um, it's weird to say. It's kind of a blessing if you can actually have that conversation with somebody. Because in my case, I couldn't get any feedback, and everybody had that same conundrum. So many people face this when a loved one is incapacitated and it's not looking good. Tough stuff. But going back, Joe, the blessing, with my dad is, my dad and I had um, we just, a strained relationship at times in our lives, and um, my dad got to a point where he was just kind of giving up, even before he got really sick. He just was like, nah, because the only thing he would really do, he doesn't have a lot of friends and things, right? He's a kind of a homebody, but his sisters and their husbands would winter in Florida, and he really loved visiting with them over like in Bradenton, and he would go and spend the weekend, and they started to get old to the point where they couldn't make the trip anymore. And this is back in 2019, and he said to me, I guess that's the last time I'll see them because they won't come visit anymore. I said, well, why don't you go visit them? And and I said, well, Dad, you know what? I said, I'm going to a mastermind meeting in Boston coming up. I said, why don't you and I hop on the plane a few days early? We'll go to Lowell, and then we'll go up to Maine and we'll see everybody. And he's like, He's like, I'll think about it. I thought for sure Joey's going to come back and go, I can't, I don't know what to wear. He's like, wouldn't take much resistance for him to just convince himself it wasn't a good idea. And to my shock, he hit me a couple days later and he's like, you know what? If the offer still stands, I would love to do that with you. I said,
oh,
wow,
cool.
amazing. So, dude, above my kin at the time a little bit, but booked 2 first-class tickets. It's like, man, if this is like the moment, I want to go all in on it
Make it
and
special, man.
make it special.
Memorable. Yeah, yeah.
We flew out there, and I was so we were just buddies, and we got to rent a car and we went around Lowell. We spent the whole first day just going around Lowell, which has not changed much over the years, and went from place to place. And he would tell me stories about, this is what happened there, and so I got in that fight with Jimmy, and this happened over there, and I was recording the conversation as best I could without him knowing, because I didn't want him to suddenly feel weird that I was recording. But I was like, I can't lose the nuance of these stories. And so we have these great couple days, and now we're driving from Maine back to Boston to the airport, and I'm going to drop him off, and then I'm going to do my weekend thing. And on the way back to the airport, there was just this moment. He says to me, he goes, I just always did the best I could. He's like, there is no right way to parent. And I really tried to do the best I could. He said, but if I screwed anything up, and if there's anything you want to say to me, I'm opening the floor, basically. And I took the moment, Joe, and I thought about it. I didn't just flippantly, I pondered for a good 30 seconds or so. And a couple little things passed through my head, but they felt things that at the time were really significant that felt trivial in this moment. And I go, no, Dad. I go, I'm good. I said, yeah, I think you did a great job, and I appreciate you, and I love you. And that was it. And then we turned up the radio, and I drove him to the airport, and I walked him to the gate. But man, I have always been so thankful for that little moment where it's like, it was that simple. The whole thing was like a minute, and we were good from there. There was nothing lingering, uh, you know, and we could just carry on being who we always were, but knowing that all had been revealed, and everybody was good. That was a blessing.
Yeah. That's powerful, man. What a great experience that is.
It was a gift. It was a real gift.
Kudos to him too, man, for
I
getting out of
know,
his comfort zone too. And also too, it takes a lot of courage to ask a question like that to you.
because you don't know what you're going to hear back. I could
No,
have,
that yeah, it's a lot of courage, man. There's a lot of openness in that shit.
and that's not his mo, and that's why it
Well,
meant so
that's what
much.
I'm saying.
It's why
Yeah,
it
I
meant
mean,
so much to me.
I know a little bit more than everyone else listening about your dad, and that's not something that's out of character for your dad.
Yeah, yeah,
But maybe all of that sparked for him, what he was bubbling up for him, and it was like, you know what, I need to take action here.
yeah. Well, flipping it to the fact that we are both fathers of men. Yours 15, mine just turned 21 last week. So I'm sort of officially done getting getting him all the way to legal adult status.
Are you ever done?
No, you're never done,
Never,
ever. And
never
and
done.
but that's and but that's what just came to mind when I thought about my dad in that moment, your experience with your dad later in life. It's like, I think what you realize as a parent at some point is, oh, I'm almost minimally influencing all this shit. I feel the weight of the world on me, and like I need to guide them and do all this. But I think my real job was to love and listen and be there. And that's almost it. I mean, and dude, my son is like a mini me. We dress the same. It makes me super proud that he likes that about us, that he's a lot like me. We're He's lanky. We have the same weird gait in our walk. It's it's amusing to see us together. Um, but he's obviously very much his own person, and we torment ourselves as parents to follow this rule and do this and do that and do all these things, and all that matters. But I think at the end of the day, when they look back, all they know is that we cared enough to want to intervene. I see it with my daughter now. She'll bring things up. It's like, oh, she actually does want to be parented, because their job when they're 12, 13, 14, 15 is to go, please get the fuck away from me. If I'm not going to, if I won't use those words directly, every action and every face I make at you is going to project, please get the fuck away from me. That's their job at that age. And so, again, it's that tricky thing of how much of yourself are you supposed to put in that relationship, and how much are you supposed to like let them scrape their damn knees physically and emotionally and just be there when it happens.
Yeah, James Hollis has a great quote from his book Under Saturn's Shadow. It says, "The son cannot become his own man until he has metaphorically slain the father.
Woo.
Not the literal father, but the father within him, the father's expectations, the father's
Mm,
prohibitions."
Wow. There you go.
So, my son's coming into adulthood now at 15, so we're having a lot of conversations around that transition. And like I was telling you before, I'm on his ass with self responsibility, self-reliance,
Yeah.
teaching him how to be independent, um, and toughen him up a little bit, man, because uh, the world doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, a hard pill to swallow for men out there, but it's a reality, and that's something that you need to be prepared for. So
Yep.
again, one of the things I'll say is my dad, he started showing up when we became teenagers, and then things began to really change.
Mm.
And I'll never forget that we were coming home from the hospital the day my son was born, and he's taking me back to his house because um, I wasn't driving at the time. I'd lost my license, and I get out of the car, I walk around the front of the car, and I start walking towards the house. And he gets out and he says, "Hey, come here for a minute." I said, "Hey, yeah, okay, yeah, what's up?" And he puts his right hand on my shoulder, his left hand on my shoulder, and he looks at me straight in the eyes, and he goes, "Listen to me." He said, "Don't wait until your son's 17 years old to make memories with him,
Mm.
because you'll regret it for the rest of your life."
Oh man.
And so I take that shit real seriously.
Mm.
Number one, because I know that was his way of making amends to me. But I can never erase the memory of the pain that I saw in his eyes.
Mm.
And that one moment of that transfer from him to me
Yeah.
of take this very seriously in your fatherhood experience. I have gone so hard on being a very present, attentive, loving father,
Yeah.
doing the hard stuff. Like, again, but my belief is, and I've had this for some time, I was happy to read in Hollis's work and in Jungian work that I've been reading that, we project so much of ourselves onto our kids. But I've always tried to root myself in the fact that he's his own soul, he's his own human being, his own mind, his own everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's my responsibility to, of course, show him the way and lead him and all these things. But he's not me.
Yeah.
And thank God, when I was his age, I was already putting shit up my nose. I definitely don't want him doing any of that. I was already in mental health hospitals
Wow.
and wanting to take my own life, severely depressed. And I had this thing in my mind that told me how much of a piece of shit I was all the time, and it never turned off. And I was always in fear. He doesn't have that.
Yeah.
I don't need to project that onto him, that
Right.
he needs to be that way and that
Yeah.
his experience needs to be mine, you know? So I thankfully I have grown enough mentally, emotionally, spiritually to have the capacity to show up for him like that. Because again, I was also able to break the generational context of inattentive fathers, inattentive DiRoma fathers that just don't show up, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so when we talk about like the work that we do in this type of work and looking and doing internal work, there's nothing more powerful than breaking generational context, because
Mm.
now that ripples into the generations that, so if we're all stuck on this western leave a legacy shit, which we
Yeah.
all are, well, maybe we should start there in our own homes.
Mm.
and
Mm.
and then what kind of impact can I make there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but now, before I kick it back over to you, like the things that we're focused on now, man, is again, girls
Yeah.
and the insanity around that.
Sure.
It's the hardest thing. It's the biggest crisis men face as a relationship. So
Oh yeah.
trying to help, teach him and guide him. And I have so much criteria of making a mess of everything that I'm able to share all that experience around
I got a list
what
of
works and
don'ts.
go,
I got a long list of don'ts for you.
yeah, yeah, what works and what's done, what doesn't. But he's also able to see, since he was 3 years old, what a strong, functioning, healthy relationship looks like
Yeah.
with his stepmother, my wife. And so that's been great. And he's lived with us for 8 years now.
Yeah.
So that's been very present in his life. So again, the biggest thing that I try to do in my time with him today is number one, show up. That's number one, just show up. Number two, I let him just be himself.
Yeah.
I don't try and impose who I am on him.
Yeah.
I root conversations in principles, values, timeless things that you apply, okay, to be a good man. I mean, the kid was excited about, he had an entrance exam for this private school that he's going to, and he was like, "Man, it was great, Dad," because he always sucks at writing, so I was worried about that part for him. And he gets in, he goes, what the best part of this was? The writing part. I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, it was because of the topics. I got to write about
Mm.
morals and integrity.
Oh wow. That's yeah.
You know what I mean? So he wrote this whole paper, 3-page paper for this thing on the reason why morals are so important the for the for civilization, and that if we didn't have them, then the world would just be broken and fall apart.
Wow.
I'm like,
Damn.
wow.
So he tapped into a topic he probably had thought about maybe more than he realized, felt something around, and the writing just flowed.
Yeah, because it wasn't some dumb, like, just meaningless babble that these
Right.
kids have to take on these tests that mean nothing and isn't anything relative to what he was excited about,
Right.
you know?
I'm just thinking about
So,
where to put the comma. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So again, like, and again, does he get all of that stuff from me? Yeah, because that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's how I'm living my life. He hears me
Yeah.
talking and having conversations with people, and we talk openly about all that stuff, very much so. Because
Yeah.
again, if I'm looking to instill the best of what life has to offer, it's rooted in principles and values.
100%. Um, I think there's a cool way to kind of bring this around, and you just said it. They, I think, learn as much or more by observing us with other people. Who do you let in your life? Who do you put in his space? How do you talk about people when they're not around? All those things. Um, my my kids feel very blessed to that there we always joke there's no normal people in our lives.
Same, bro. That's so funny.
and
Yes.
we had a joke. We were like, if they're normal, they're the people we make fun of. And they go, I don't understand the neighbors. They're so normal, And they feel thankful for that. And uh, the one little piece of maybe parental advice I'd give to people listening, if especially if you have younger kids, allow other voices in your kids' lives. If you trust the other adults that you keep close, cherish the relationship they can have with your kid, even in just moments of giving a little advice or hearing them differently or responding differently to something they're facing because they're not you. They're not your parent. And yes, we have the most influence, but we're still sort of the boss and it has a certain context. And they'll talk to our friends and they'll get a different conversation, same probably values we would, extol in the, but they'll hear it differently. And so when my son moved to Nashville, Joe, I thought, what can I give him to take with him that he can hold on to? He's going to be alone for the first time in his life. And so what I did was I reached out to people that I knew he thought something of, my adult friends, and I asked them to write him letters.
Ooh.
I said, I don't care what you say. It's not a rah-rah thing. It's just like, if you could give him like what's one thing you learned about life around his age or soon after that you would want to share with him. And dude,
Oh man, I'm
people,
still in that, bro.
yeah, people stepped up, dude. It was so amazing. And I printed it in a book. And dude, he read that book over and over and over. He would, we would laugh about, some people were really funny with it. Other people were, and I got to know these people on a deeper level by seeing the advice they would give my kid. And it's something, I know he'll always cherish, and I cherish, and the importance of, because I think you brought it up. It's like seeing your relationship with Allie and seeing how you talk to other people. It's like, okay, even if that's not the nucleus of how you got here, it's this is my correction, and this is where I'm putting my energy now. And man, I think they get more from that, how we deal in life, than the things we say to them directly.
Yep. And the thing is too, is that I would say one of the most powerful things that I know my son has seen me do is help others.
Yeah.
My life is deeply rooted in service,
Yeah.
and pulling these guys out of the depths of alcoholism and addiction, and helping them get the lights turned back on in their,
Yeah.
metaphorical home in their head, and being brought back to life, and being, good standing in society and all that stuff. So,
It's a big joy.
when he's with me in those trips with those guys and in those conversations, he has a, front row seat of seeing that it's very important that you help others and give a helping hand and lift other people up, especially when there was guys previously that helped you do that to restore you to what you could become, so that I could be so great for him.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's like,
100%.
and then I
That's
explained that to him. I said, the reason why I do this, buddy, is because there was men who took an altruistic approach to help me when I was there. And the only reason why I'm so healthy and great for you is because those men lifted me up, picked me up, and believed in me.
mm,
And now this is why I do this. So I make it very apparent to him that service to others, thankless service to others,
yeah.
is a very important ingredient to life. Not that I'm trying to adjust my halo here and approach sainthood and everything's all rainbows and butterflies, but again, like that needs to be a part of it because of what it was able to give me for him, right? So
100%.
then the other thing is that you're absolutely right about having those other people in his life, especially men.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, he had a PE coach at his school. He was super blessed to be at a charter school that was a K through 8, and it was a very small school, just was growing. And he had the same PE coach for like 5 years. And this dude is a good dude, bro.
Yeah.
Super involved. And they had such a great relationship. And him and I were talking all the time and helping each. It was like I had somebody else that had
Yeah.
sometimes more access to my son than I did throughout
Yeah.
the entire day, that was there for him, right? Because
Right.
you ship him out for 7, 8 hours a day.
Uh-huh.
That's the whole fucking day. You're not even
A
so
lot can happen. Yeah.
right. So then I had that, and his piano teacher and his baseball coaches he's had, like really solid dudes, man. And it's just been, like you said, so powerful. And I always tell them, as soon as I realize that they're on that kind of level, I'm like, hey, listen, when you see opportunities to pour into my son, I don't want you to hold back. You know,
Yeah.
you have my blessing on that. Because,
That's
in
huge.
their
Yeah.
positions, a lot of times they're like, oh, don't be doing that shit with my kid and blah, blah, blah. And they
Sure.
get attacked, they get
Right.
that a lot. So
Yeah.
I make sure I give permission to people that
Yes.
I see are on that level with me. And
Right.
I trust, like you said, to say, hey, please do this for my son because he's going to be able to hear it way more from you than
Right.
Charlie Brown's teacher over here, like fucking.
100%. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's a big one. I mean, when, I mean, some fathers, especially like powerful, business leaders and stuff will compete with their kids and really
Oh, yeah.
try to hold them back.
Oh, yeah. You can't be more successful than me.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, fucked up. There's so many ways for this relationship to be complicated and fucked up.
well, it
Um,
reminds me of Hollis's line from Swamplands of the Soul. He says, what matters most is not the father we had, but the father we carry within us.
mm,
All sons carry an image of father, idealized or demonized, and struggle with this image throughout life. So much, like for me personally, so much of how I feel about my dad is determined by whatever story I tell myself about my dad.
that's right. That's right. We
You
do get
know,
to control it 100%. And especially, again, going back to the beginning, the second adulthood, what that's probably the biggest question is our relationships. What do all of these mean? Of course, they're a part of me and I want to honor them. But if they feel bad when I think of them, I now have the opportunity to work through that and change that, whether the person's still with me or not. I get to change that conversation, whatever outlet that is. But it takes work and it takes time and it takes consistency to do that. But man, that is probably what's holding people back more than anything in the world is their how they feel about the relationships they've had that they either allowed into their lives or did not choose via family and things. And that's probably the basis of what most therapy is, working through that stuff to put it in a different place and see it from through a different lens. And that's is why it's so beautiful that your dad said that to you. I mean, in one moment with his hands on your shoulders, he both expressed his regret for the way he didn't show up for you and apologized through making sure you didn't repeat that. And obviously, it had the impact he intended because you've never let a day go by without it being at the focus. So it can be corrected at any time, or at least it can be shifted. In that moment I had with my dad, it wasn't as severe. There was nothing to discuss, but the fact that he said it, like you said, and made himself vulnerable, I think that's all it is, guys. Show vulnerability and give them permission to be vulnerable. And maybe they won't get to this point in life feeling trapped and alone in their thoughts.
yeah. And listen, I know some people that their dads are just bastards.
Yes.
And the best thing that they probably could do in their life, and some of them, some people I know have chosen to, is no, I'm never
Cut
speaking
them
to
out.
that guy again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's some evil that people are
Oh,
dealing with
yes.
that the mainstream doesn't really hear too much about, and when that shit's going on, it's very different. So, again, that's not across the board. I know that's a small percentage, but it is there. I just want
It
to
is
call it
there.
out. I want to
I,
call it out.
I'm
And
glad that you did because some things are unforgivable. And, but you are still here living. And so, again, that's must,
well,
what do you do with it?
right. So what I would say is, and what Hollis talks a lot about is how much longer are we going to pay tribute to and make that be who we are today.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly can't change what happened,
Yeah.
but how much longer is that going to dictate who you are and how you live your life? Right. So again, and this is just coming from friends that I know that have had that experience, that they said that it was like, I couldn't continue to pay testimony as to the reasons why I was behaving the way that I am,
Mm.
because I eventually had to take responsibility for who I was, because this is who I am, right? Which is,
Yeah.
everyone is responsible, right, for their own individuation.
And it's also
And
like it's like prolonging the crime
right.
long after it's
Hmm.
passed, and
Yeah,
you shouldn't honor the perpetrator like that if you can't
correct.
avoid it. Yeah.
Well, and then, the last thing I'll say, because we're coming to a close here, is um one of the most powerful things that I've ever read from Carl Jung, um on the role of fathers in midlife, and it was from Modern Man in Search of a Soul. And he said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. So,
Yeah.
in all of my father's failings, admitted to me or not admitted to me, consciously or unconsciously passed it down. The one thing that I can say that he did do a good job is that he really lived his life. Whether he was totally selfish and a full blown narcissist musician, I don't know. But I do know that he didn't go full blast on what he loved and really lived that. And it was a great example for me.
Yeah.
And it didn't it he never gave me any advice other than, whatever you decide to do, just really be with it.
Mm.
Go all in. I don't give a fuck what you do.
Yeah.
Just really do it. You
Yeah.
think I sit in my room for 12 hours at a time because I kind of want to do this? you know so
Yeah.
again, I know a lot of that is kind of obsessive and compulsive and addictive behaviors, but I also know that's kind of like who I am. And
Right.
so but I also know, if you want to be great at anything, that's kind of what it takes, if that's how you want to live your life. But I
Yes.
don't think I had to bear from him a burden of an unlived life, right?
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
thing I would say is that maybe he didn't, and his generation, obviously didn't do a great job of this, of looking intrinsically at his part on correcting some things that were passed down, which now in our generation is becoming more prevalent. And
Yeah.
we're beginning to examine and become aware of these things that we can shift and change. But when he did, he started to work on it. And it's not easy for people in their 50s and 60s and 70s to make life altering changes, even in their 40s. That's a long time to be living, to
Yeah.
start freaking changing, especially when you're like, can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's like,
That-
bullshit. We ain't dogs.
yes, that's
We
right.
we have the
Yeah,
power of conscious choice.
that's right. It's choice. That's the word. We have a choice, and it doesn't mean it's easy. Making the making the choice, it- people avoid making that choice because, like, fuck, man, I got a lot of work to do, and this is gonna hurt, and this is gonna be. But man, you know, we're here, and we're living, and we got life in front of us, and it can always be better than it is. So great conversation, Joe. Thanks for sharing all that you shared. This was
Likewise, and I'm stealing that letter thing, bro. I'm
dude, please
definitely
do.
doing that with my buddies. I'm going to include you on that shit. Wait
I'd
till
be
you.
honored. I'd be
Yeah.
honored. Yeah,
Uh,
18th birthday or whatever. I mean, I just think it's yeah,
you want
because
to tell them, you want to tell the listeners about what else we got going on and where to find us and all
yeah.
that shit.
So men in the middle show.com. We also have the Substack. This is where we write articles, kind of are parallel musings to these conversations. And you can also get the audio there on the Substack. And always you'll find links to all this in the show notes. And do please help us out. If this is meaningful to you, if you're getting some value from these conversations, the best thing you can do for us is share it. You can also review it. If you can review it on Apple, on iTunes, if you can figure out how to log in there, just that little effort will mean a lot to us. And just give us an honest rating and some notes about the show, and that'll help us reach more men who can benefit from these conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. info@maninthemiddleshow.com. Definitely want to hear your feedback, your stories on how all of this is resonating with you.
Yeah, and send in any topics too that you feel like Kevin and I should bring up that might be valuable or important to you guys. We'd love to hear about that stuff too.
Absolutely.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for joining us. Take care.